Well, hello, and I'm glad you joined us today. We're going to start a brand new series, and this series will probably be 3 episodes, but as you know by now, that can be subject to change. We're going to do a windmill, kind of like the old Western windmills that probably had a water pump on it or something of that nature, set out behind the house. We will emulate it, the fact that it might have been made out of wood. I model in scale, and of course, I always put links below that. By the way, Sketchup is no longer free from Trimble, but I have a link below where you can still, or at least at the time of this video being made, you can go to CNET, and they still have the free version, which is 2017. But it's what I use, and it's all I've ever needed, really. I'm not a professional designer, and I don't do houses, and I'm not trying to sell plans or anything like that. So for me, this is all I need, and you'll see it does an awful lot. But if you're new to SketchUp, there's a couple of things I need to point out, because in this episode, up to now, we've been working with things that were either parallel or perpendicular to our red axis or green axis or blue axis. But in today's video, I'm going to show you how to splay the legs. When you go up to a water tower, sometimes you see them standing straight down, but sometimes that's because the designer didn't know how to splay the legs, you know. But anyway, our legs are going to go up at an angle. Okay, when that happens, we're no longer on a parallel or perpendicular plane to the easy stuff. So there's things you need to know about how SketchUp works. If you want to draw a line right to left, click your right arrow button, and that locks it on that axis. If you want to go back to front, which is the green axis, hit your left arrow key, and it'll lock you on that axis. And if you want to go up and down, hit your up arrow key. Okay. That keeps you on plane. We're going to be doing a lot of pushing and pulling, and the push-pull tool will not work on a surface that is not flat. So you have to stay on that plane if you want all these things to work. Another thing you need, when you output to a 3D printer, you'll need an STL file, and this version of SketchUp does not come with that. You'll have to download an extension. Again, there's a link below. And then when you open your file menu, you'll see a thing that says Export STL. Okay, but we'll do that when we finish up, and I'll take you through the print process and show you what we've done. Let's see, one other thing. If you're really new to SketchUp, the best teacher I ever ran across was a lady named Brooke Godfrey. I sort of had a spotty knowledge of SketchUp, and I didn't use it half the time because it was frustrating. I didn't know where the bells and whistles were and all that kind of stuff. And I'd seen a little bit here and a little bit there, but nobody really put it all in context. This lady takes every tool one at a time and makes about a 3 or 4 minute video about it. And she's got about 30 videos. But here's the thing. If somebody sticks 3 hours in front of you and tells you everything about SketchUp in 3 hours, are you going to remember all of that? Probably not. But if you can take it 3 or 4 minutes at a time, you get home from work or whatever, and you got 15 or 20 minutes, you don't have 3 hours, but you could watch 2 or 3 of those videos. And that's what I did. Some days I watched 6 or 7 of them, but it was just depended on how much time I had and how much attention I could pay to it. But after about 6 or 8 days, I had gone through all the videos, and I had I'm no expert, but I have a pretty good working knowledge of how SketchUp works. Not to mention I've worked with it enough now that I've learned some of its little quirks, and I'll try to share those with you and help you get through some of the things. But I wanted to go through that. Now, this windmill that we're going to do, first of all, we've got to have a base or a stand for it, and we're going to splay the legs. That'll be episode 1, and then episode 2 I'll show you how to make the fan part, and we'll put it all together, and then in episode 3 we'll save out the files and print it out and do that fun stuff. But what we're going to do, some of you have seen some of my other videos, but here's what I usually do. Anytime I start, all of this stuff sort of comes out of my head. Now what I'll do is I'll go online and I'll look at several examples. For example, I looked at a bunch of windmills. I looked to see what they really look like in real life. I got pictures from the net of how they actually look. And then I looked at how some people had dealt with making a kit out of it, you know. In the N-scale world, things are so small and so tiny, you have to exaggerate some things. For example, I've already built this thing one time, and I tried to use a 1 millimeter. Oh, by the way, I also work in millimeters. I'm from America, and we use the imperial system here, and boy, that is a millstone that's been hung around our neck. If you work in these small things, you're always having to work with fractions. In the millimeter world, you're basically working with whole numbers, or at least like up here, 2.5 millimeters. Well, that's still, in a way, that's still whole numbers, even though that would be a half in fractions there, you know. It's just much easier to work. And once you realize that in the N-scale world, 2 millimeters equals a foot, roughly. I mean, I think it's 1.91 or something like that. But believe me, if you use 2 millimeters per foot, you can model almost anything. Well, okay, 1 millimeter would be 6 inches. A half a millimeter, well, a half millimeter is getting small. That's getting real tiny, so there's not a lot you're going to do once you get down past a millimeter. There's some things. But anyway, I tried using a radius a diameter of 1 for the rods that would hold the windmill, the fan part. It was just too small, so we're going to exaggerate that a little bit. And for those of you, I'm a little bit envious for those of you that model in HO and O scale, because you can start to get some fairly good detail at those scales. And we do okay in the N scale, but we just have to exaggerate some things. You'll see what I mean. But there's a conversion table down below too, and it shows you how I came up with how many millimeters per foot, and I give it to you in every scale. So whatever scale you model it. For example, if you model in HO, if I'm saying 2 millimeters per foot, you're going to have to think 3.5 millimeters per foot, okay? And so on. Okay, I think that's enough of that. So here's what I came up with. I'm going to make my fan 12 feet in diameter. That's probably a little larger than you're going to find on the farm. Although, you know, they do make 12. They make them on 16. They make them any size you want to pay for them, you know. But most people, it's my understanding, most people use 6 or 8 foot. I tried doing a 6 foot. It came out about a half inch across in the N-scale world. And there's no detail whatsoever. So we're going to go with a 12-foot fan. And, of course, at 2 millimeters per foot, that's going to be 24 millimeters in diameter, okay? Okay, this is just a little tip I'll show you when we get there. Okay, we're going to turn the fan blades are going to be turned 30 degrees. You'll see what I mean when we get there. Okay, we've got to have a bushing for that fan to ride on, and that's going to have a radius of 2 millimeters. And then the inner diameter that we mount the rod to the fan is going to be 1 millimeter. All right, I think what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and get started. We're going to have 12 blades on the fan, and these little things will come into play. But see, this is how I just go in and I think these things out, and I sort of look at the examples that I have to work with and try to guess what they would be. Now, another thing too, we're going to make ours 30 feet high, because if you don't make it 30 feet high, it's going to make that 12-foot fan look a little large. And most farms probably don't have one 30 feet high, but here again, we're in the N-scale world, so we're going to exaggerate a little bit. But I think that's enough of our preliminary episode here. I hope you'll join us for this series where we designed this little windmill. And the episode 1 will be up shortly. Thanks for watching.